Hi, this is Li-Toroptsov, and you're listening to Image is Psyche, a podcast dedicated to fantasy lives. On today's program, I'm going to be doing something that I haven't done before. I'm going to be talking about a film which I've just seen. And also on today's program, I'm having a guest, Jacques Le Roux, who is an art historian and who is a film enthusiast who has a huge film collection, who will be joining me to discuss the film which we've seen, both of us. It's called Godzilla Minus One. Hello, Jacques.
Hello, Yuri.
So, Godzilla Minus One. What do we know about this movie, Jacques?
Yes, we're talking about a Japanese movie by Takashi Yamasaki that was released in November 2023 in Japan first, and then in the rest of the world.
So, another Godzilla movie. So, what makes this one very special, and why are we talking about it?
Yeah, you're saying another Godzilla movie, and you're absolutely right. 38 films were devoted to the character since the first one, 1954, and 23, by the way, in Japan and 5 in the USA. This one is quite special because it goes back to the original vision, to the original style, and to the original horror of the creature.
Oh, interesting. So, but tell me, why did you want to talk about this particular movie? What was so special for you?
It's about the new subtext of that film. It's a very different film from the other ones. It's not your usual Godzilla. In the other Godzillas, it's usually about a monster coming ashore and scaring the population in a global way. Here, it's more about one individual, the young man who's the real hero of the film, reacting to the apparition of Godzilla.
As for me, I would take it even one step further. For me, it's an archetypal story, and it's a movie about a PTSD, a post-traumatic stress disorder. I was watching it and I was thinking to myself, I cannot believe this movie illustrates all the stages of this disorder. And so I would like to look at this film through the psychological lens, through the Jungian psychological lens, of course, and having a more art historian point of view. A little bit of a warning here because we're going to be going into the story of the film, so there will be spoilers. So if you haven't had the chance to see the movie yet, maybe this is where you want to stop and come back. If you have already seen the movie, let's take the plunge together. So let's start with the character of Godzilla.
Well, Godzilla is a monster. He's a monster who's coming from the sea. And the name itself, Godzilla, comes from a mix in Japanese of two words that mean gorilla and whale. In art history, every time you have a monster, you have a meaning behind it. Usually, it's a metaphor. In 1954, in the first film, Godzilla stood for the nuclear threat and the atom tests that were carried out in Bikini and different places in the Pacific. Remember, that was the early 50s, and that was a few years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Let me build on what you just said. In psychological terms, a prehistoric creature that comes from the depth of the ocean. Of course, in Jungian psychology, it immediately gives way to a creature that comes from the unconscious, from the depths of history, and it appears unannounced, and it has a clash with the world of people. In this regard, Godzilla is a demonic creature. And as you said, in the 50s, that was a representation of the nuclear threat, which definitely occupied the collective consciousness at the time. In Godzilla Minus One, this unconscious danger is different. I felt it concerned the annihilation of a psyche of a man. In this particular case, the main character. Before we go into the details of the main character's life facts, I wanted to retain this information that Godzilla is a monster of the abyss. And he has a demonic nature, and he's probably a godlike force. So that's important. It's not a man-made force. It's a godlike, demonic force. So now let's talk about Shikishima. So this is the name of the protagonist of the film. So he's a young pilot, kamikaze, who he was sent on an assignment to blow up one of the Allied vessels, but he got scared. He got scared, and he pretended that his airplane had a malfunction, so he turned back to the aerial base. So when we meet him for the first time, he's back on the island of which he took off for his assignment, which he failed, and he's meeting with the team of airplane mechanics. Shikishima is shaken, of course, because he's ridden with guilt and shame. But this doesn't stop there, because Godzilla makes its first appearance on that small island, and it turns out that Shikishima is failing again because he fails to shoot the beast as he was ordered. So what we are witnessing is a series of very traumatic events that destroy the protagonist. In essence, he's a coward, and in the eyes of the military, he's a deserter. So that's a terrible secret that he cannot reveal to anyone. From the very beginning of the film, we're witnessing this an enormous amount of death and destruction. And this is where this PTSD is rooted, this confrontation with real death, the death that is brought by the war, and the death that is inflicted by this emerging monster.
And when he leaves the little island, he tries to go back to his hometown where his family lived. The town has been destroyed, and his parents have been killed during the attack.
So there's even more death. So death is now decimating his familiar environment.
And he meets a young girl, a refugee, who's lost everything in the war, and who comes with a little baby, a little orphan that was given to her. He decides to bring them in his home.
Or whatever is left out of it, because it's all bombed and it's all in shackles, and yeah,
under his roof, I would say. True. And with this new family of 3, if we can say so, there is a sign of life coming back. There is a light there, but it's very, very difficult for him.
The war is over, Japan lost, and Japan is in ruins, but we see that, the country is beginning to rebuild. But for Shikishima, the war is not over. He cannot possibly go back to any sort of normalcy because he has this terrible secret that he's carrying, and having witnessed all the war and destruction, he's broken. He's profoundly broken. So his sort of family life, cohabitation with Noriko, this young refugee, and their child, it looks on the surface like a family, but it doesn't feel like one, because everybody lives in their own corner, so to speak. There's sort of appreciation, there's care, but it's not linked by the feeling of reciprocity. And this is a very common condition, psychological condition for example, for war veterans who come back from the zones of combat, but who could not integrate the life of the living, having spent the time in the zones of death. No wonder this is the moment in the film when Godzilla reappears. The monster has been detected in the ocean, and it is presumed to be heading towards Tokyo, the capital, for complete destruction. From the point of view of our protagonist, the Godzilla in his life, the monster that prevents him from living a regular life, is the experience of war, an experience of death, or otherwise PTSD.
And this is where this Godzilla is not your usual Godzilla movie. It shifts from the monster to the individual story of this young man who is confronting his own monsters.
Confronting his demons. So, how can you do that? And the movie gives us a hint that when confronted with this level of monstrosity, you need the power of the collective. You cannot do it on your own. And our protagonist is not alone. So he's living with this woman whose name is Noriko in the film. There's a child. They form a sort of a family, but they also integrate it into a larger fabric. Even though the place is entirely bombed and destroyed, they still have a neighbor who is a very helping woman who also comes to their rescue when they need to babysit, for instance, because both of the Noriko and Shikishima, they work. And there's also a community in Ginza, so this is where it takes place, that is confronted with Godzilla right now. And the central government cannot intervene, so this community is on its own to protect itself with the power of the citizen participation. So if I draw a psychological parallel here, PTSD is not a small condition. It needs a village to be able to heal. And this movie is an illustration of that.
So what you're saying is that Godzilla in the movie is the trauma.
Godzilla is the image of the trauma. And remember what I said in the beginning. Godzilla is the demonic force. It's the force out of this world. It gives us an indication that this type of trauma is very, very deep. So a human cannot just go there with their bare hands to be able to fix it. It needs a collective, so many doctors, many practitioners, shamans or whatnot. It needs ingenuity. In the film, you'll see how this collective is coming up with a solution, how to get rid of Godzilla. So you need this very powerful forces, collective forces, to be able to stop Godzilla.
And in the film, this power is almost invincible. They try to get rid of Godzilla with different means, bombs, fire, bullets, drowning him. Nothing works.
So what you really need is the power of imagination, this ingenuity I already mentioned. Because otherwise, how do you destroy a godlike creature?
And interestingly enough, when the movie was released, the first one, in 1956 in the United States, they changed a little bit the title. It became Godzilla, King of the Monsters. And listening to you, I was asking myself how 70 years after the original film came out, this new one raises the same theory of fear, this trauma. What is the collective trauma that we're afraid of today? That was the atom 70 years ago. Well, it is still today. I mean, this is still valid. But there are other ones as well. The climate change, war, epidemics. I mean, all these are something that make that film very, very relevant.
So let's go back again to the film and see what happens. What is the resolution? Godzilla was detected once again in the sea, and they figured out that he was heading towards Tokyo. Shikishima, our protagonist, is having a very difficult life. He's fighting with the symptoms of PTSD. He has nightmares that torture him. He has a guilty consciousness. and he's struggling to find work. So to earn his living, he accepts a very dangerous and very risky task and job of cleaning the mines. He finds himself on a wooden boat with a small crew, and it's on this boat he has a second encounter with the monster, with Godzilla. So the second encounter with Godzilla makes it evident that no single ship or arm or weapon can destroy the creature. So it's a confirmation that a collective effort is needed to defeat him.
And I never thought about that, but just listening to you at the moment, I was thinking that in the last encounter with Godzilla in this film, he's not alone. There's a whole team with him aboard a military ship. So it's a big group, it's a big collective. And this is the way he's going to be able to deal with this monster and do something.
So this brings back again this tension between individual and the collective. The collective creates wars that injure individuals, but it also creates support that heals the individuals. So it's very important to remember this. So the collective comes up with a creative plan, and what they've decided to do is to use the depth of the sea as a force that could potentially destroy Godzilla. So they found a very creative way of very quickly deepen him to the 1500 meter depth of the ocean, and then make him emerge again. So this kind of very quick dipping and going back on the surface presumably would destroy, with the atmospheric pressure, would destroy this huge monster. So it's a very scientific solution, and it's interesting, science that is called to solve a psychological problem in a way. So we see the development of neuroscience these days, and psychopharmacology, and many other kinds of treatments for PTSD. So these are creations of humanity. And the trick is that it works, but not completely. Godzilla is damaged, but still alive and is ready to use its thermonuclear beam again. So the whole plan didn't go as they wanted it. So to me, this is a call to go back again and to look what is symbolically Godzilla standing for. And in the beginning, I proposed that it's a demonic archetypal force. It means that there should be a spiritual solution to this problem, not only scientific. Scientific is great, it worked, but not entirely. There needs to be another kind of solution, and to me, that's a spiritual. And this is what we witness, because the protagonist makes a decision. And this involves a sacrifice. Without going too much detail and unveiling the beautiful ending of how Godzilla is dealt with in the end of the film, I'm going to just say that the protagonist sacrifices his old and badly damaged self. In a way, it's a symbolic suicide. And I think it's very important because the film begins with our protagonist being the actual kamikaze, this suicide pilot, which he fails to do. And in the end, he's dying symbolically. He's dying to his post-traumatic stress to be able to be reborn. I want to emphasize this is not the death of his actual physical body. He commits a symbolic suicide. So something that is old, this old damaged ego attitude has to die. And he performs in a way a ritual that allows him to achieve that. And it's a beautiful scene in the film because it's also a scene of redemption.
And the film could very well have finished there, but they decided to add another scene, that is the closing of the movie. He is back in Tokyo in a hospital where Noriko has been taken because she's been injured by Godzilla. And it's a completely different scene from the rest of the film. I mean, everything in the rest is like very dark, very despaired. And here suddenly we arrive in a place where everything is shiny. I mean, the light flows into her hospital room. She's smiling. And I'd like to know what you make out of this scene and what is the symbolic value of it.
This is a very important scene because on a personal level, this is the scene that witnesses his repair, his personal repair, in that very moment. Just a reminder, before that moment, we didn't know if Noriko was actually alive. The fact that they found her recovering in one of the hospitals is almost like a miracle. She survived. So I would like to propose an intrapsychic view of this scene. What does it mean? Imagine that Noriko, Shikishima, and their child are the inner figures of one and the same person, of one and the same psyche. Complex traumas, they inflict what in shamanic terms is known as the loss of soul. In Jungian terms, it's a split. For our protagonist, it means to lose access to parts of his psyche. And in a way, Noriko is a representation of that lost part of the psyche. And what happens in the end, he is reunited with her. And it's a very sunny, glowing environment. In personal terms, Noriko is the inner feminine figure of Shikishima. And he thought he lost it forever. And in fact, not really. They found each other again, restoring the balance, the inner balance of the psyche. And so what seemed to be like a couple before has become a real couple. Now there is a feeling, there's love that both express. And there's a child as well, so it's a figure of three. And it's very significant what Noriko says as the last line in the film. She looks at Shikishima and she says, "Now your war is over." So our protagonist has made a full circle. And on this journey, we've encountered a number of Jungian concepts, and the unconscious, the personal, and the collective unconscious is, of course, one of the sort of the major ones because it includes the archetypes and the complexes.
And this is what I really liked about the film. Watching it, I felt it was not the usual blockbuster and the usual Godzilla, as I said before.
Indeed, this is a film that allows this deep symbolic reading. It has the depth that hides creatures like Godzilla, but also the depth where healing can happen. Thank you for listening. Feel free to visit the website of our guest today at jacquesleroux.fr. Till next time, bye-bye.